Hi, welcome to the presentation today. I am Dr. Nafhesa Ali from Northumbria University. So today I'm going to be talking about decolonising positionality, looking at examining racism, bias and discrimination within reflexive positionalities. So there are three main aims of the presentation today. First, to examine how reflexivity aids relationships. Second, explore how and why this is part of the social research process. And third, position reflexivity to tackle issues of race, discrimination and bias. So it's important here to cover positionality and what we mean by positionality. So situating your positionality during the research is a complex yet essential part of the research process, which highlights the varying ways in which positionality shapes the research process, interpretation, comprehension, validity, values and beliefs attached to the ways in which the research data itself is presented. In feminist work, how you are located and positioned is frequently identified through the varying intersections which go hand in hand with positionality. Yet how you are framed within your own historic experiences and life course positionings further shapes your position in the world, but likewise in the theme and topic of your research. This presentation therefore serves to share the importance and challenges for researchers, identifying their own positionality, which can motivate the researcher to conduct the research, making positionality a more complex than describe who you are approach. The presentation also draws on innovative ways in writing positionality, such as thinking more about your own experiences and your own memories of growing and aging, which are repositioned by and against those who you are researching. The reflexivity. Reflexivity aids relationships between partners, communities and individuals who are part of the research process, and this includes research for social sciences, for example sociology, criminology, international relations and politics, and various other social science research. So these relationships identify the spaces that may be difficult to navigate because of the absences, silences and invisibilities, but likewise the implications for the research that is being conducted. So similarly, reflexive positionality serves to aid the researcher's relationship with the people and places they are conducting the research through their reflection of who they are and also how they are seen during the research process. So this presentation argues for the importance of becoming reflexive researchers and also how we share the experiences, practices and negotiations of those we serve to give a voice, as we as researchers are not separate to the research process. But likewise, we do this to tackle issues of race, discrimination and bias, where our positions locate us as researchers of colour, conducting research that is essentially embedded within Western othering. So some of the issues and problems include, for example, othering, reconceptualizing reflexivity, locating various intersectional positions, situated identities, and how we can deconstruct power relationships. So within this notion of othering, this presentation would like to address how reflexivity needs to be reconceptualized to be more than just an identification of our intersections. For example, lifelong reflexive positions taken by researchers over the course of their academic career, which serve to inform and locate different and varying intersectional positions and relationships with people, places, and their own situated identities across their own life's course can influence the lens in which they conduct their research. But likewise, their interactions with the people and the participants is also key. So Linda Thurley-Smith writes that writing is part of theorizing and writing is part of history. Therefore, locating our historical selves and intersectional identities as researchers can serve to shed light on the lens we shine on participants and the way in which we interpret and understand their life experiences. But this needs to be more than an add-on approach. And the appeal of feminist reflexivity, then, is that it aims to deconstruct power relationships between academics, researchers, and participants, those with whom we conduct the research with, and the ones conducting the research. So what is reflexivity then? Research is often viewed as an impersonal activity, where there is an exception for researchers to approach the research objectively. Yet research is complex, and other than the perceived challenges often identified during the ethics process, research can present and highlight vulnerabilities. But to understand what reflexivity is, we must first position ourselves within a definition. So the simplistic meaning of reflexivity is reflecting on how you are positioned within the research process. So your relationship with others, which often includes the participants, but may also include the partners, organizations, and individuals you are working with. So when we talk about position, we refer to intersectionality and how relationships are constructed with others through class, gender, ethnicity, age, and any other intersection the researcher may feel is important to the research. Patricia Hamilton persists. Feminists have identified reflexivity as a particularly inclusive tool for navigating the shifting power dynamics, using it to draw attention to how a researcher's positionality informs every aspect of the research process, from the development of the research question to interactions with the research participants. So by understanding reflexivity as a tool in which we can examine the shifting power dynamics, reflexivity becomes a useful means of understanding complex power relations and how the multiple intersecting aspects of the researcher's identity are and can be shaped by the research being conducted, as well as the interactions with the participants. Hamilton adds that reflexivity should be adopted to sustain ethical research as it is rooted in intersectionality, but allows attention to be given to the shifted, situated nature of power. It can also be difficult to translate the conceptual and theoretical aspects of reflexivity into its practical implications. But the practice of being reflective allows researchers and individuals conducting the research to think more critically about their positions in the research, their assumptions and views when coming to the research process, allowing a more collaborative, responsive, and ethical way of managing this research. So this is because reflexivity is rooted in social constructionism and the way in which our social realities are created, how we make sense of the world and our everyday interactions and conversations through oral and written language. Concliffe, 2004. So when we look at reflexivity, personal stories can also be included. So the past, our stories, local and global, the present, our communities, cultures, languages and social practices, all may be spaces of marginalization, but they have also become spaces of resistance and hope. Linda Thuay-Smith argues that to deny the historical context in which we ourselves exist simultaneously disregards our own claim to humanity, to have a history, and to all sense hope. Without our understanding of how we position ourselves in the world we exist, locally or globally, within the constructs of our own communities, cultures, languages, and social practices, it is difficult to address wider issues and claim our own spaces for wanting to challenge, deconstruct, and give voice to those histories, struggles, and ideals we as researchers are drawing attention to. The critique of giving a voice to others through research therefore lies in the claims of knowledge, which I argue is an important factor in creating inclusion, and greater inclusion, more importantly, in the ways in which we understand people's experiences, but also the way in which our knowledge of the world, such as age, gender, ethnicity, race, etc., are constructed and situated. By doing reflection, we are then able to challenge our own understanding and dismantle spaces of racism, bias, and discrimination. So going over the different aspects of reflexivity, such as the issues and problems it presents, what reflexivity itself is, reflexivity and personal stories, we have to understand the ways in which we ourselves can then become critical reflexive practitioners. So Anne Cunliffe, 2004, argues that this is about becoming a critically reflexive practitioner and adds, this helps us understand how we constitute our realities and identities in relational ways. By being a reflexive researcher, but more so a critically reflexive researcher, we can identify our own reality, but also improve our relationship with those we are working with, those we are working towards, and those we are giving authority and agency to within the communities and places we are working with to lead the research in ways that best suits them, through, for example, co-production. Smith 2021 contextualizes the reflexive approach and persists that this insight can help to explain experiences. So the importance of writing and deconstructing the intersectional story calls for greater insight into how reflexivity can be used to theorize the work that we do as researchers, but also validate our own roles in constructing our research process. Therefore, first we must link reflexivity to how a researcher's own historical life writings and experiences can be useful in becoming a more reflexive practitioner, and second, recognize that it allows the researchers to position themselves in the research process by locating their own historical intersections and relationships with those they are working with. For example, transnational identities and connections are complex and multidimensional as well. So the ways in which transnational identities can be transferred across generations recognizes the way in which the perseverance across the life course to sustain homeland identities can construct and position multifaceted intersectional identities for subsequent generations. Margaret Jolly suggests that life stories can help understand patterns and ways in which life writing can be seen as a form of activism. So I lay claim to Jolly in support of her argument for the life stories, and the argument that life stories can create balanced judgments about insiders, outsiders, and others when a researcher or activist's own life story can work to aid this understanding. The politics of writing about privilege, where reflecting upon memory work autobiographical memoir, and empirical research can create space to write about or against privilege, creating sites of activism with potential for social change. See Pease 2011. Here, life course theory helps us to understand how people can support one position and then suddenly hold a contesting view, but also where at times they can hold both simultaneously. The appeal then of feminist reflexivity is that it aims to deconstruct power relationships between academics, researchers and participants, those with whom we conduct the research and the ones conducting the research. Racism, bias and discrimination. Now to link reflexivity to a topic that is both crucial and uncomfortable, the use of reflexivity in confronting racism, bias and discrimination. It's a journey of self-awareness, social critique and the pursuit of justice. Reflexivity, in essence, is the act of reflecting on our own thoughts, actions and biases, and how they shape our perceptions of the world around us. It's about recognizing the lenses through which we view the world and understanding those lenses are not always clear or unbiased. Now, let's talk about racism and the link to reflexivity. Racism is an issue that permeates every aspect of our society, from education to healthcare, from employment to the criminal justice system. Racism is not just about acts of hatred, but it's also about the subtle ways in which systematic inequalities are perpetuated. Reflexivity challenges to confront our own complicity in upholding racist structures. It's about acknowledging that we all have biases, whether conscious or unconscious, and that those biases can influence our behaviors in harmful ways. It's about recognizing that silence in the face of injustice, which is tantamount to complicity. But reflexivity is not just introspection. It's also about action. It's about using our privilege and our platforms to dismantle systems of oppression. It's about amplifying the voices of those who have been marginalized and advocating for meaningful change. Bias, on the other hand, is the lens through which we interpret the world, shaped by experiences, our upbringing, the society in which we live. It's important to recognize the bias is not inherently negative. It's a natural part of being human. However, when left unchecked, bias can lead to discrimination and perpetuate inequality. Reflexivity challenges us to examine our own biases and question the assumptions we make about others. It's about stepping outside of our comfort zones and engaging with the perspectives that challenge our own. It's about recognizing that experiences are not universal and that our truth is not the only truth. And finally, discrimination is the act of treating someone differently based on characteristics such as race, gender, sexuality, or religion. It's about denying people's opportunities, rights, and dignity simply because of who they are. Reflexivity challenges us to confront our own prejudices and actively work to combat discrimination in all its forms. It's about standing up for what is right, even when it's difficult or unpopular, and it's about creating a world where everyone is treated with respect, dignity, and equality. In conclusion, reflexivity is not just a theoretical concept. It's a call to action. It's about interrogating our own beliefs and behaviors and striving to be better allies in the fight against racism, bias, and discrimination. It's about recognizing that change begins with us and that we all have a role to play in making a more just and equitable world. So to conclude, from the vantage point of social sciences and historical research methods and approaches, the combination of both history and social science research can be highly useful in locating authority and dismantling hierarchies during the research process, through the cultural historical context of everyday experiences. Highlighting the world of ordinary experience, but experiences that can demonstrate how behavior, values in one society may be dismissed or taken for granted in another, are also key. However, these relationships are never easy and at times can be unsettling. Academics and researchers often have heightened consciousness of trying not to research others, but build partnerships so they are not working on the periphery of the outside. And this is where reflexivity and becoming a reflexive practitioner becomes essential in dismantling spaces of racism, bias, and discrimination during our research processes. And today's presentation references include Patricia Hill Collins, Margaretta Jolly, and Linda Thurley Smith. I'd like to thank you for listening to this presentation today on Decolonising Reflexivity, examining racism, bias, and discrimination.